School Days, Mo Better Blues, King of New York, Malcolm X, The Usual Suspects, and then in the smaller screen, Breaking Bad, and now on Better Call Saul. And in theaters near you this very weekend, reprising his role in the Maze Runner trilogy, Maze Runner: The Death Cure, starring, in part, Giancarlo Esposito. Good to see you, sir.
Great to see you.
I've tell here what I told you backstage, big fan for quite some time, so I'm really appreciative of you being here. And then when I find out that you and I share a love of the New York Yankees, of pinstripes.
Oh, my goodness. Take me back to my childhood.
That's it, pretty much? Is that your team, the Yankees?
That's my team. That's my team. Since the age of probably about 8 years old, I went to the older Yankee Stadium.
Of course, the great Yankee Stadium.
The great Yankee Stadium.
What a theater. What a theater.
Great ballpark. Really great ballpark.
Where'd you normally sit in the stands?
I normally sat, somewhere right behind home plate or off to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Went with a dear friend, Alan Macmillan, who was a friend of my mom's, a press guy, could never afford a ticket. He always bought us on glove day or bat day. Always came away with something.
Sure.
Which was, so wonderful.
Yeah, they used to have bat day all the time in Yankee Stadium until they realized they were giving out bats to people.
Yes. and if the Red Sox were there, you'd have like a little bat fights.
So suddenly they became like mini bat day.
That's right. They did the small ones, the little small ones.
But they used to give out like real pieces of lumber, man.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Way back when I was a kid, they did, and it was always great to get those.
Yeah.
And I love wooden bats, and it makes me think a lot about a couple of things. One, back in my day, we had Thurman Munson as a catcher for the Yankees, who, to me, he's the reason why I became a catcher in Little League, because I loved his aggressiveness, his arm. I loved the fact that he could hit.
The captain.
He was the captain. He was the man. The man. And it makes me also think about a guy I know who 25 years ago, Joe Cosentino, started the Vermont Mountaineers Stovetop Dinner. And what they do is he started baseball leagues for kids. So I honor his memory. He passed away last Friday. And they do a dinner every year, and they give away bats to young people, wooden bats, so they can start to feel how that wooden bat might feel in their league. And most of these young people who are in this league go on to the majors.
No kidding.
Yep. Joe was a great man, and 25 years ago, March 24th, he started these leagues all across the country, and young people are still benefiting from his gracious and wonderful spirit.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's neat. I'm glad that you paid tribute to him. So what type of catcher were you, Giancarlo Esposito?
Oh, man, I was a good catcher. You know how I knew? I caught a guy between third and home base, and we're throwing the ball back and forth, and I see he's going to charge me. So I chuck the ball to the third baseman, and I just give him a nod when to get it back to me. He gets it back to me, and I just gutted him. And my mother said, "Did you have to do that?" I said, "Well, I had to tag him, and his stomach was a good place."
Right.
So she said, "You're a good catcher."
So that's it.
Nothing got by me.
Now, this day and age, that might be illegal. You're not allowed to block the plate like you used to back in the day now.
That's the truth. The game has changed a bit, unfortunately. But, we have to be careful. But back then, as a kid, I was very aggressive.
Sure. Have you been in the new Yankee Stadium? Have you been?
I have been there.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed being there. It's a different feeling. It feels richer. It feels more corporate. And I have a daughter who I've passed on my love for the Yankees to, Shane Esposito. She's 21. And when I go with her, I sit in the bleachers, in the cheap seats, because that's what she's used to. She feels like we're family there. Different kind of folks sit there, and you get a better view of the whole stadium. So I enjoy going with her
in the cheap seats. That's pretty cool. Well, this year, though, and I think you'll even admit this, Mr. Red Sox fan over there, that in the playoffs this year, the new Yankee Stadium captured a little bit of the old raucous Yankee Stadium. A little bit, because it's just the old one was truly like the Roman Coliseum.
It was.
Okay? Even with the way that the top of the stadium was, right?
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
So it's a couple times that I've been to Rome and I've seen the old Roman Coliseum. First time I saw it, I'm like, that looks a little bit familiar to me. And I'm like, okay. Obviously, Yankee Stadium took it from the Romans, but this year did feel like a little bit of the old school cauldron of Yankee fans with this playoff run that nobody was expecting this year with Judge and the rest of that crew.
Very, very exciting young people on the team. Really excited to be getting Giancarlo Stanton coming to the team, an incredible athlete. I mean, look, we have a very rich team, and Other teams are jealous. I love the scrappy Red Sox. I have dear friends in Boston, and that is what we focus on. I'll go see one game at Fenway with them.
Okay.
And I'll wear my Yankee hat and get yelled at and screamed at, and they'll come and see one game at Yankee Stadium with me, my friend Frank Mulaney, and he'll wear his Red Sox hat and he'll get screamed at and debauched. And so we do that every year because it's a fun game that we have.
By the way, I love the way you said Stanton's first name.
Ah.
Obviously, you have some experience in that first name, but I can't believe they got him. I still can't believe the Yankees got him.
I'm a bit shocked as well. I am, but
you're not a part of the belief that Jeter handed him because he's the Manchurian candidate front office man for the Miami Marlins, and he's trying to just help the whole program.
I think there is something to be said about that. Oh, no doubt. Come on, guys. It's all an inside job.
Oh man, let's take a break. We're back in 60 seconds. We'll talk Maze Runner, which is immensely popular, and then obviously I do want to go down a Breaking Bad wormhole with you because that's one of my. To me, it is the greatest. I get over the air, if you will, drama where you do still have some constraints that you wouldn't have if you were on pay cable.
That's right.
It truly is one of the greatest shows of all time, and certainly is under the constructs in which it was created. I want to talk about that with Giancarlo Esposito when we come back here on the Rich Eisen Show. Welcome back to our show, Maze Runner, The Death Cure, in theaters near you, starting on this Friday. The man who plays the role of Jorge, Giancarlo Esposito, here on the show. I want to just start with your career first. When did you first hook up with Spike Lee? How did that happen?
I was doing a play called Zoo Man on the Sign, Negro Ensemble Company, 1979, 80, and Spike came to see it, came right backstage, said, I want to work with you.
No kidding.
Nope, right away. He was cleaning films at Maxie Cohen's place, just cleaning the films as they went through the steam back, and we started talking about a film that was a musical called School Days. And he let me read it, and I said, hey, it's really great. There's a lot in here for a musical. Can you pull it off? And we did. And my relationship with him continued for years and years because I respected what he was trying to do. I think he's a wonderful filmmaker, and he brings some consciousness and some heightened characterizations to his movies.
When was the last time you saw Do the Right Thing?
Wow. I saw it 3 months ago.
No kidding.
In the Netherlands. A really horrible copy, but the film was great. It's a bit scratched, but it was great.
How do you feel it's held up?
I think it's held up very well. I think it really is a film that has stood the test of time. We're still very much in some kind of consciousness that this film should be seen. When my 21-year-old daughter saw it in her film class at 17, had never seen any of my work, she started to get what New York was like then.
She'd never seen any of your work?
She hadn't seen anything. She came and saw one episode of Breaking Bad. It was episode 401, Box Cutter. And I turned to her and I said, just remember that guy up there is Gustavo. And this is your father. Just realize that. She said, okay, Papa. She watches the episode. She turns to me and she says, good kill, Papa.
And you're like, that's my girl.
That's my girl. That was the first episode she ever saw. She didn't like the show. She didn't get it. And then she went back after that episode, watched it from the beginning and went, oh my goodness, now I see. I said, I told you. Now she does all my social media. That's how excited she is about it.
It's funny because I watched Breaking Bad from the very first episode when it aired on AMC because I was a Cranston fan, and there was something unique about the story. As I saw the commercials for it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. And I was hooked from the first minute. And my wife saw it and was just disturbed. She was disturbed by it. And then so I went through watching it essentially by myself. And then in the last season, as things were beginning to cook, for the lack of a better phrase, in a certain way, I just said, you have to just trust me on this one. And then she binged, I believe, all 66, 67 episodes of it in a span of about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I got to watch it again. And the amount of breadcrumbs that were dropped.
That's right.
Years before things came to be. It's unbelievable. It's one of the most layered shows I've ever seen.
That's the brilliance of Vince Gilligan, his writing team. He takes suggestions. He works as a team player, but he has ideas. And we all love great novels where little seeds are dropped and it all comes together and falls apart by the middle, but it all comes back together at the end. This is a show that's very similar to that. It keeps your mind fresh and it keeps you thinking and trying to figure it out, but then it's different than what you could have ever imagined. Part of the reason I did this show is because during this period of time when they asked me to come and do a guest spot, there's the whole beginning of the scourge of crystal meth in America was happening, and I read a story about two young guys, Mormon guys, from obviously Utah, who did their mission and disappeared, and they wound up being found months later using crystal meth, and I thought this is powerful, and awareness has to be brought to the subject. So yes, so I decided to play a drug kingpin to bring some awareness to this subject through this show. It was one of the commitments that I made to myself, that people need to know about this so we can become more savvy about what our kids might be experimenting with.
Under the cloak of an individual who appears to be a first-rate community responsible individual.
Precisely.
It really is just a particularly dark character that you play on this show. What do you think you personally brought to it? Because I'm imagining you gave your own spin to Gus Fring. What did you bring to the table that Vince Gilligan and the crew were like, okay, stick with that?
Well, I finished that first episode before I got off the plane. As the door was opening, my phone was ringing. Would you come back and do another? I was convinced I didn't want to see the stereotypical bad guy. I didn't want to see the mafiosa. I am Italian. I've been to Italy with a little dog and the guy who's, I wanted to be a guy who was affable, part of the community, who handled his business like a business, and that people could eventually possibly begin to like. It was the calm demeanor that I brought to this character that I feel like really allowed him to be elevated. It was my yoga breathing. It was my attention on someone else. It was my caring about people. Gus does care about people. He's brutal to them if they don't do what he says, but he's very kind to them if they do. He is the ultimate father in the laundry business, in the drug business, and in the chicken business. Can't forget I make good chicken, boss.
Los Poros Hermanos, man. No question about it. But you're also the Madrigal Company, which, by the way, when you saw the commercial for Los Poros Hermanos, at the very bottom in the fine print, it said a Madrigal Corporation at the very bottom. That's what I picked up on seeing that episode a second time. And just continue just a couple more on this.
So I think it's Madrigal.
Madrigal, right. What did I say? Did I say something?
You said magical. Okay. I like magical, but I think it's Madrigal.
Madrigal, yeah.
And we're going to get into some more of that as we go back in Better Call Saul.
Well, that's what I want to get into as well. One question on the demise. Spoiler alert. Now, were you disturbed by how you looked in that final scene? Because I sure was. I mean, I honestly dreamt about it. How it looked. I can only imagine that's you on the screen.
It is me. Extremely disturbing. Vince checked in with me. We talked about it. I said I didn't want this death to veer off into sci-fi land. It had to be real. We had to believe it, and we agreed on that. Yes, very disturbing because it was a 4.5-hour makeup, a trip to Los Angeles, K&N. Howard Berger actually did the work, and I have to say that I sat for a bust for an hour and a half. My lovely Shane Lyra came with me. Very scary. Had to hold my hand. Couldn't hear, couldn't see. And a lot of people tap out. They got to just take it off. So they made that bust. They did some digital stuff afterwards. And then on the day, they had to do all that makeup. And when I finally turned, I insisted on not looking in the mirror when it was being done. I turned my back. And so they could turn me around, and I was in shock at the artistry with which this was applied to my face. And I was in shock at how people immediately started taking selfies of me, but it was a little bit creepy, very, very creepy. And so we had discussed a lot of it, and Vince says, what might you be doing if this happened? And I said, well, look, Gus is very proper. I close my jacket, when I stand up. I open it when I sit down. I said, I would be straightening my tie. And Vince his eyes lit up.
Good for you,
and he
man.
said, oh, my goodness, what a move. I said, yeah, he's preparing to go.
Sold.
He's going to the afterlife.
And then in Better Call Saul, you're shooting it now? Are you shooting this?
We're shooting currently our 4th season. We started January 8th.
Okay.
So we're in our...
I cannot wait for the connective tissue.
The connective tissue is coming. I'm really excited. I joined the cast on the 3rd season last year. It's been a very slow burn.
Yes.
I'm enjoying people trying to figure out what's going to happen. But now Hands on, baby.
Really?
It's all downhill.
The burnt. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
In a Gus way. In a very Gus is stealth. I think they're really quite amazed how I've come back to the show because I had to make a decision. Do I gain weight to make him a younger Gus because I'm younger, many years younger, or do I lose some and make him even more stealth and a little less polished and a little more trying to find his power? And I decided to lose some. And when you see what this guy does with his own hands and how fast he does it,
right.
I met a guy once in Detroit on the street. He tried to rob me. He came up to me with a knife. This is how I think about this guy a lot because I think about Gus. And I looked him in the eye and he was very frightening. He said, I will cut your heart out and hand it to you before you fall. And as he said those words, I realized he meant it. And I said, I have two choices here. I can turn and run, or I can confront. I had already offered him money, but the guy was high as you would not believe. And as he finished saying, before you hit the ground, I had his knife. I had shoved him, and I says, what do you want now? You want to keep coming, or you want to back off? And he backed off. That's how fast Gus is. Sometimes we have to react very quickly. This is going back many years ago, but I think of it because that kind of physical, emotional, mental connection is what it takes to do what I do as Gus.
Well, and takes you, what you do as an actor, Giancarlo Esposito here, and plus, hearing that makes you the perfect badass for Maze Runner. So,
love this movie.
This is intense. It is a big film for the trilogy, and also, this is a rabid fan base for this too. You've been in two things that are monster rabid fan bases. What's it been like for you with Maze Runner?
I've loved it. I love this character of Jorge. He has fun. He's smart. He's erudite. He's a reader. He's an explosive expert. I love that he's the only adult with the young people, that he has to learn to trust them. I love that when Thomas starts to say what his plan is, Gus questions him, but then allows him to say everything he has to say, like we have to do with our teenagers,
right.
16, 19, you listen to them, you learn from them, and that Jorge listens and goes, okay, I'm with you. This particular film, I respect the director so much, and I love the studio who's producing this movie. They're onto something. It's about family. This film's about family. It's about not leaving a man behind. It's about saving the world from the monopolies that have taken it over. It's about truth. And hopefully we'll never get to this dystopian world that's described in the film. But look, this movie is a long film that is action-packed from beginning to end, but you still get character and you still get heart. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and for the radio audience, we showed the first scene or the first minute of the first scene, and I was sucked in right off the bat. Just awesome. And you said the special effects were done on a computer?
Well, Wes Ball's the kind of guy, he marks everything out on a computer. He describes it. He then puts it on his computer so that he can then relay it to the great effects teams. And I find him to be brilliant, not only with what he does in that arena, but also how he coaches us actors.
And for the rabid fan base of Maze Runner, what do you tell the fans about this third film? What should they know about?
Non-stop action. Go see it. It's satisfying. And that ultimately is what it has to be. You've had two other films that cover the same gladers and the same characters. You get to know them. The fans have been waiting so long to see this third installment, and it really lives up to all of its expectations.
Does it leave any unopened questions, do you think?
Well, I think
more?
I think it does leave some unopened questions because there are 6 novels. You never know. James Dashner did a great job writing 6 books. We're at our third, so it leaves some questions. I would love to know how things turn out if we ever really do make it to the safe haven, and if that is a place that is sustainable, right? Because if our world were to become as crazy as the world in which we live in the film, then we're going to have a lot of scavengers trying to take it over and find power. But level heads will can change the game. And I like this film. It gives our young people an opportunity to see and get in touch with their own humanity and their own power. So many young people between 13 and 19 years old and even 20 are afraid to say what you want. I tell my young people, my kids, ask for what you want of the universe in general. Think it, ask it. That's the way to get it. And ask yourself a lot of questions about what you want your life to be. that's why I still love doing what I do at this age.
And you're awesome at it, man.
Thank you.
You're awesome at it. And clearly you told Aaron Judge the same thing, because look at him now.
We love Aaron Judge, man. That's a big boy.
It is. 2018's good for you, man. You get the Yankees, Maze Runner, and Better Call Saul. Thanks for coming on.
My
Please,
pleasure.
and I hope this is the first of many times. Big fans.
I hope so,
here.
too.
You got it. Giancarlo Esposito.
What a joy.
Here
Thank you.
on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.